What do we have to do to get some respect around here? I couldn't agree more. We got the patron request from Noble. They say, I am a big Medea fan, and I feel like they did Medea dirty in Fate Stay Night. Very true. With Nasu stating that Medea is one of the top 5 mages from the Age of Gods, what other versions of her do you think there could be? And how strong would they be? By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your request. Listen, man, I've been saying it for the longest. Medea is one of those characters that gets done really bad for what we already know that she's capable of. It's really sick. There's a bunch of other characters on the cast that people say get done dirty, but they don't get done nearly as dirty as Medea. For the love of everything, we can't even get her casual outfit, let alone a new version of her. The spinoffs are our only saving grace right now. So, if Medea wasn't shafted in Fate Stay Night, or if she had a bigger role in FGO altogether, however you want to play it. We do have a little more from Noble, saying that from her lore, I could see her as a ruler because she's an actual princess. This will be a what if situation where she wasn't cursed to love Jason and instead chose to lead her kingdom. Also, I could see her as an avenger because of being cursed, she could be written to seek revenge on Jason and Aphrodite. So we'll start off there. And honestly, I don't see a problem with any one of those. We will take what we can get at this point. So when it comes to her being a ruler, I imagine it to be a lot like the situation with Joan and the way that she defended her country, as long as we see the elements that's coming from Medea's side. And what I mean by that is Medea is usually a character because of her background that plays the more antagonistic role. And while that's fine for story purposes, that also means that there's only certain levels of dialogue that we're gonna get with her because we're never really truly on her side out in the field, at least for anything serious. So for any type of Medea event or Medea route, because there were some jokes about a Medea route back in the day, what I would want more than anything is those direct conversations with her, even if that means the story itself has to pan back and forth between Ritsuka or Shiro, whoever the MC may happen to be. I do want full use of all of her capabilities and not just them telling us about it, like her being able to bring out her dragon, the dragon of Colchis. We literally have to get that if she's protecting her kingdom. At the same time, now that I think about it, it's reminding me a lot of Jalter bringing out Fafnir and the way that she acquired dragon attributes when she was made, and she had Fafnir on their side protecting them. Really, that was supposed to be Medea. It's crazy now that I think about it, looking back, Jalter really stole Medea's flair because that's really where she was supposed to shine. So now I'm thinking of it like if Medea does that now, then she would just be repeating what Jalter already did back in Orleans. So we would have to pivot in a way where it's not the same thing. I still want those elements in there, but not just a clone. Clearly the disrespect just doesn't stop. But anyway, I'm for sure down for her being a ruler. I'm down for her being an avenger. Again, on top of Medea being a princess in lore, what a lot of people bring up is Medea's wrongdoings in her past, but completely leave out the fact that she was cursed for the majority of her story. As a matter of fact, her story is a lot like Herc's, and this new rendition will be a lot like Herc's, because Herc was also cursed by Hera to take his own kids and wife out, and he had to sit in agony with that pain. Same thing with Medea. Medea was cursed by Aphrodite, and along the way she ended up taking out her brother, conspiring against the king of Iolcus for Jason, just for him to leave her in the dust anyway. All the things that she did for him while she was possessed, getting the king put into the cauldron, and still left her to be with somebody else just because he wanted to be a ruler that bad. And we'll get into that too, but that type of a background is more than enough for her to be an avenger of any sort. It's just a matter of the way they want to layer it. And we're talking the real Jason here, not the made up LB5 Jason, but what actually happened. I mean, even if you go by the events of Okeanos Okeanos. You can tell by the way that was written. Heavily influenced by her actual myth, she got used up by Jason there and she didn't even care, because that's how it actually was in her myth. She was down to do anything for him, even after the curse wore off, because it got to a point that it put her in too deep and he appreciated none of it. To that point, I will say that it's more of Aphrodite's fault for cursing her in the first place, but for him to be so ungrateful on top of that, and then to turn around and expect good things to come to him, is really comical. So it would be nice to see her have things go her way. I don't want to say that she would go out of her way to just torture the man, because she did evidently still had feelings for him. Otherwise, she would have just taken him out the picture altogether. There was nothing stopping her. But in this Avenger role, maybe she continues her studies in magecraft and goes even further beyond what Solomon was telling us about her potential of being top 5. On top of that statement, you have another one from Nasu that claims that Medea was on the level of true magicians. The only difference is she never learned any true magic, but she could have if she had enough time to herself, or she had somebody that was around her that could get her up to that level. So in potential, she's even stronger than people may think. I mean, when you talk about true magicians, there's only 5 true magics, and we still don't know all the creators of each one of those. Imagine him saying that Medea would be the 6th magician. That's an insane compliment on any scale. There's also the statement from Nasu when he was talking about her route. He says, it's such a pity that there was no caster route. It would be pretty interesting, with Medea seducing Ryder, then setting up a trap to stab her in the back. So in this potential route, it will be another circumstance where Medusa is set to the side yet again, which back then would have been pretty rough. But I will say that as of today, Medusa has plenty. She has more than plenty in comparison to Medea, and I'm glad she does. But as for Medea's position, the main reason that I want to see her on our side more than being an antagonist, because that's usually the case, is because I really want to see her win. Like truly. Because even if we get a circumstance where Medea does get her own event, or she gets her own route, or whatever the case, if she's at the head of the other side, it's still gonna lead to us driving a blade through her chest once again. And I don't think that's proper to what she deserves. Like, she really deserves not only true happiness, yes, it's me saying that, but something huge at the same time. We gotta go out strong. I do love her in Ataraxia and the cooking show, and I'm real big on her relationship with Kazuki. I think that's extremely proper to both characters, considering just how tarnished both their backgrounds are. It just works perfectly. They heal each other, and most importantly, it's real. It's not forced, because that's another thing. And I understand that this is just following the framework of how her character was in myth. I get that. But she got betrayed in her myth after being completely innocent, to get resummoned as a servant to get betrayed by Atrum once again. So yeah, I'm happy to see Atrum get fried because of that, and she gives him what he deserves. And speaking of her getting rid of Atrum, for her other classes, you do know that she can be an assassin, because she did torch the girl that Jason ended up with. She can be a berserker, because again, she was sane up until the point where Aphrodite put the curse on her, and then she started to let loose on everybody for Jason to get where he needed to go in order to return with the golden fleece. But you know something else? She really could be an alter ego too. That's another class that she could fall in, and it's also one of the newer ones, so it would be a bit more fresh, because the alter ego is just perpetuating a certain piece of your life and driving it up to 100. So her alter ego could just be all the time that Aphrodite had the curse on her, and that could be a story in its own right, where we get all the Argonauts, not just some, but everybody all in one place, and see her diverge and take her own path, and then we start to see the effects of that curse naturally wearing off. But at the same time, for her to be an antagonist, and this is a big point in Medea's character altogether, it's a lot like Ren, where she's forcing it. Medea isn't actually evil. Again, it's the thing where, well, I'm already too deep in. I didn't want to do all that. She didn't want to take out Atrum, but it was like, what else you gonna do? Clearly had no intentions of doing her right. But it's a lot like Ren, where she she's putting on a front, and for her to be an antagonist, I feel like that's hurting her more than anything, because again, that's not who she is. She's not really down to be the bad guy. She just happened to end up being the bad guy. So even with the OG Jason thing, I don't want it to be a situation where she does get her revenge and it goes too far and now she has to sit with that and regret of how that turned out. That's kind of the same path of what happened originally, how she had to sit with betraying her father and taking out her own brother against her own will. So to your point about being an Avenger, and this can go either way, I want her revenge on Jason to be more subtle so that doesn't have to sit with her, maybe along the lines of capturing him or something of the sort. But I really do want to see her get revenge against Aphrodite, because she's the one that did majority of the damage. I would love to see a timeline where Medea was actually able to become the sixth magician and she got to go toe to toe with Aphrodite and put her in her place for doing what she did. And that way it's a bit more well-rounded. I wouldn't mind if the story started right at the point where Medea was supposed to be cursed and she immediately found a way to snap out of it. But she knew who it was, and from that point on, it was on sight. That was her mission. Not to say that she's just out for carnage, but she does want Aphrodite's head. I wouldn't mind seeing Kazuki there, or maybe some type of FGO iteration of Kazuki. Maybe we get a little more into his background, because a lot of his background is a lot like hers. It's just these anecdotes here and there. So to complement them and their relationship, we find a way to flesh out both their characters, but wholeheartedly, and like really get into it, not pulling any punches, showing us the background of Medea's training and what life was like for her on the Argonauts, or what life was like for her after the fact when she disbanded and went on the hunt, or just her leading her kingdom from the start altogether. Any one of them could work. Anything but what we have now could work, if we're being honest, because it's getting to the point where this is ridiculous. You're not wrong about that one. And here's another thing that you have to take into account about Jason. Since they've waited so long to give Medea what she deserves, the very act of her getting revenge on Jason now might further antagonize her character even greater than she had been before. Because you gotta remember, a lot of these guys are new. They didn't come up on Feast Day night. So Medea means nothing to them. Medea to them is what they saw in FGO. And when people think of Jason, their mind is not gonna default to the real Jason. It's not gonna default to Panhuman Jason. It's gonna default to Lost Belt 5 Jason, because that's just the better version of him. So then it's gonna become a situation where people have to pick between LB5 Jason and Medea. And honestly, just looking abroad, I think people would pick LB5 Jason, sadly to say, because at the very least, Medea did what she did for Jason in her myth. Initially, she stuck her neck out for Jason because she was forced to. Jason did what he did in LB5 because he wanted to, and that's a huge difference. So now it's gonna look like she's the bad guy still. It's a mess, man. I can't front. And that's why I'm primarily looking towards the Aphrodite plotline. Things that's worth attention on the side. We need more interactions with Cersei, because Medea did get lessons from her. It's literally her aunt. We kind of brushed over that in Salem, but again, not really. And going back into Herc and how him and Medea had similar stories, it's really a shame how the two of them didn't have any interactions in Feast Day night, because they both knew each other. They both were part of the Argonauts, and I understand that's not the crux of her story. That's not her main plot line, and Herc couldn't communicate, but it's still important. If you didn't already know that, then you would have no idea. It still would have been nice to see some reflection from both characters. There was nothing stopping them from doing that.